And, yeah, it was egregious, but we kind of gave it away.
In somewhat, we gave it away. However, you want to give them a 2-minute minor, fine. They give up the power play goal. It's 3-1. It's 10 minutes to go. No harm, no foul. Do they have to kill the penalty better? Absolutely. But I see both sides here, but it's going to be one of the most talked about officiating decisions in any sport, in any playoff of all time. And you hate to see reactionary officiating, which we saw. We didn't actually see them make the call on the ice with their own eyes. And then the head of officiating afterwards made a statement saying, very vague, the officials made a call on the ice for cross-checking, and after discussing with one another, they decided to make it a major. Very vague, and frankly, they weren't even thinking about calling a penalty.
No, I mean, there was an awful long time between when it happened and when the penalty got called. But it really feels like people are walking around town with a cloud over their heads today. I was talking with Dave before we went on air, and he sounded down. It's like Knights fans are hurting.
I didn't have a bet in the game. I realized no financial investment, so I'm not bemoaning a losing ticket. I root for the Knights, and this was, this was a tough loss.
As a bettor, was it worse or better? Would have been, I mean.
That would have just made it even worse. If it cost me money,
exactly.
Too.
It's being a fan, you're stuck with this all summer. Being a bettor, you're over it by the next games today.
Yeah, I'll throw my 2 cents in. The call was awful. Okay, I mean, if you look at and there's no debate on it. By the way, the NHL Rule 59 is pretty clear about this. That there's going to be an attempt to cause an injury for it to be a major penalty. Well, I mean, so the referee, who never was going to call anything in the first place, now deems that he was attempting to cause the injury. I got to tell you, the cross-check wasn't what caused the injury. It was the collision that ensued with another player after that. I mean, they just got it completely wrong. The one thing on the Golden Knights side, and I do pin this on Gallant, and I'm not blaming Gallant in the overall big picture, but I was watching the game at a restaurant, and I actually got up after the second goal and yelled. It was a bar, so it was okay. It wasn't a really nice restaurant. Okay, call timeout. Use your timeout. I don't know what he was thinking there, JD. I mean, you could see. I got to tell you, when they made it 3-2, it's like we're going to blow this game. And I even tweeted, because I could see it unfolding, and I could not believe he didn't take his time out there. You had one timeout. Use it and settle your team down.
Yeah, there's really no other time to use the timeout. You only get one because you only really need one. There's 10 minutes left in the game. You could see, I saw what you saw. Everything was snowballing, and you knew another one was coming. I was a bit surprised he sat on his hands there. Maybe he was saving it for one of his terrible goaltender interference challenges that might have been coming down the road. But, I'm with you on this one, Dave. I was a bit surprised myself.
And I feels like Knights backers are hurting a lot more than Maple Leafs backers because Toronto fans are more used to it. Yeah. We're not used to this.
No, Boston has had Toronto's number in the playoffs for the last handful of years. Frankly, I watched a lot of Game 6 and a lot of Game 7 in that series, and Boston was much the better team and absolutely deserved to win that series.
Yep. All right, so let's talk about the betting aspect of it. In your house, Caesars Entertainment is not as local-based as some others, so I imagine for the ones that are really local-based, this was a phenomenal result for them, even if the guys behind the counter are Knights fans. They had some consolation, let's put it that way, from a financial standpoint. How about at Caesars Entertainment? What did this result do as far as the series and Game 7 wagers are concerned?
As an overall, if you lump it all in, it was pretty good. We actually needed the Knights to win the series. We took you always take some long shot bets on the dog down 3-1 or 3-2 in a series. So that money kind of piled up, so we lost a little bit to the Sharks. But last night, everyone was on Vegas. Tourists, locals, it didn't matter. Everyone was betting Vegas. So in that regard, that result was good. Going forward, the Sharks is one of our worst teams in the future market. We're pretty much about a break even to them. So in regards to the futures, it wasn't the best. And then going forward, it may affect the handle a little because, we do get some local people and betting Vegas, but ultimately the handle will still be good because it's playoff hockey, and once you get down to the final eight, it's a sport everyone wants to watch.
I'm just hoping that, and there's been a lot of growth in the NHL this year. It's been a very good year for the league. I'm hoping this doesn't turn off some fans who just get disgusted and say, oh, the officials stole it and I'm not going to watch anymore. So we'll see what happens. As for the Sharks, they now face the Colorado Avalanche. Talk about the price on that series, and I will tell you right now, I am betting Colorado in this series. I have made my mind up, regardless of who won last night, that I was going to take Colorado at plus money against either the Sharks or the Golden Knights, so I'm not much of a fan, Teddy, because I was going to take Colorado. I like the Avalanche to win this series.
This is an interesting one because we hung San Jose minus 80 last night, and needless to say, it got smashed down. I think the Calgary-Colorado price was a bit too high in the first round, and Colorado looked excellent against Calgary, dominating pretty much all game, every game throughout that series. San Jose showed brilliance against Vegas, but they also showed the ability to give up goals in bunches. Martin Jones has been better against other teams than he has against Vegas, and I think this price now is getting to the point where San Jose minus $1.40 or less is looking quite inviting to me. I feel like this is an overcorrection by the market.
I got plus 40 on it, so I'm pretty pleased with that. My take on it is that McKinnon is playing at an otherworldly level right now. Grubauer is on a redemption tour after sitting on the bench after going into the playoffs last year as the starting goaltender, and then just sitting there and watching Holtby get all the games and hoist the Stanley Cup. And I just don't think San Jose is all that good, to be honest with you. And I think they were just flat out lucky to get through this series, whereas Colorado dominated. I tell you quickly, I had Colorado as my number at one point early in the season. I had them as my number 3 power rated team in the league. I like this team a lot. And then they got some injuries, and they hit one of the weirdest slumps of all time. They lost 11 consecutive overtime games. They got 1 point each in those games, but they lost 11 in a row. And that's why they had to fight so hard to just get into the playoffs. If they'd had they could have gone 3-8 in those games, and they'd have been easier. I think it's a really good hockey team, and we'll see what happens. The other series, St. Louis is taking on Dallas, and it looks like the Blues are a pretty solid favorite here, Jeff.
Yeah, we opened minus $1.65, a little bit higher than the market, and that got the plus 45 got scooped up this morning. I think St. Louis is probably the best team in the Western Conference. Was really high on this team before the season started. They went in the tank, fired the coach, bought into whatever Berube was selling, and ever since January 1st, this team's been a buzzsaw. Dallas looked really good against Nashville in all but one of the games and absolutely deserved to win that series.
Nashville stinks.
And I don't think that this is as much as Dallas played well as I'm not sure how good Nashville was. Their special teams were terrible. They didn't have a lot of offense. I think the price is right here on for a bet on St. Louis. I think St. Louis dispatches Dallas pretty quickly in the series.
Yeah, I know. It's diminishing what Dallas did because they did play well, no question about that, and Bishop's been phenomenal. But, 5-on-5, there was a 1-goal difference between the teams in the series. It was all special teams, and Nashville had perhaps the worst power play in the history of the National Hockey League. And that's not an exaggeration. They were dead last in the regular season at less than 13% efficiency, and they went 0 for 15. 0 for 15. They got even worse in the playoffs. So in effect, they became the 32nd ranked power play out of 31 teams. And that was how Dallas won the series. I think Dallas is stepping up in class here, JD.
Totally agree. The star power on St. Louis exceeds that of Dallas. They have much more scoring depth than Dallas. Again, you've got to question the rookie in goal, but he really only showed like he teetered once or twice in the Winnipeg series. I think he keeps it together, and again, St. Louis in 5 makes the most sense to me.
And I'll give you credit, Dave, because you talked about the Blues prior to their series in Winnipeg, that game 1, and you said if they win game 1, they're going to win this series, even though they lost games 3 and 4 at home. You nailed that series right. Spot on. So we have the Islanders sitting home waiting because there's a Game 7 tonight, the Capitals and the Hurricanes. What kind of action are you seeing, and what are you expecting in this contest when it actually plays out on the ice?
All the money's on Washington. The public is just piling on. And I think it's an overreaction to Game 5. If you look through, Game 1 and Game 2 were close. Washington got out to a lead. Carolina fought back in both games. Game 2 went to overtime. Carolina has won all 3 games at home. And the 6-0 game in Washington in Game 5 is just, you kind of just throw it out. Like, there's always those games in a playoff series that are just a throw-out game. And to me, that's the one. And I think the line is an overreaction to what happened in Game 5. I expect this game to be a lot tighter, a lot closer. I don't know how much it's going to matter, but everybody knows about Justin Williams' success in Game 7 over the course of his career. I think the number's too big, and there's plenty of plus $1.40 around town on Carolina. And if I didn't already have a series bet on Carolina, I would probably have a bet on Carolina plus 40 tonight.
And of course, prior to last year, the Washington Capitals were, as bad as the Maple Leafs, maybe worse when it comes to Game 7s at home. That's what the Caps do. They lose them. Well, until last year.
We'll see if they do that tonight. Bruins and Blue Jackets. Bruins have the home ice. I'll just quickly say it like this. You better win Game 1. And I'm a Bruins fan, and now I only have one team that I have allegiance to now from a fan standpoint because the Golden Knights are out. The Bruins have to get ready for this game. There's no real time off. It's not like the NBA where you get about a month off between series. They get right into it. And Boston better not let down. You got to stop this Columbus momentum right now.
Yeah, they do. This should be a really good, long, drag-out, grinding, low-scoring series. The one thing I find interesting from a betting angle, and I don't have any proof or statistical backup on this from the playoffs, but just when you look at these teams that have been off for 5, 6, 7 days in the regular season, they always come back stale. Columbus has been sitting around for a week. Boston's been in the flow of things. A Boston first period bet is probably good tomorrow. It might take Columbus 20 minutes to get their legs under them.
I like it.
That being said, I expect this one to go a long way, and I would expect the first team to 2 wins a lot of these games.
So the NBA playoffs, well, the first round hasn't exactly been a group of compelling series. And
really?
Interesting to note that the favorites, how about this? The team to win the game, 33-2-1 against the spread in the 36 NBA games so far. So the point spread hasn't really mattered all that much.
So what does that mean from a betting standpoint when the favorites are getting all the spreads covered as well?
Let's just say the house is looking forward to round 2. A lot of these games in the first round, they're mismatches, and all the public favorites seem to be getting the money. There have been more favorites than dogs, but not an exorbitant amount. But the right ones have been getting there for the public. And now, when you look at the Eastern Conference, all the teams now in the Eastern Conference should be somewhat competitive with each other, and they're all teams that draw money. So we should see some good two-way action. Looking forward to round 2, to say the least.
So am I. And I've said this throughout the course of the season. I really don't care about the NBA until now, because this is where it gets fun, when the junk teams are out of the playoffs, and you're going to be down to 8 good teams. And now the NBA becomes fun to watch, and that should translate into more fun to bet on as well.
Yeah, you see great handle on these games as it goes further in, and it's just a sport that attracts the masses. So yes, as long as these teams, the good teams, keep winning, the handle will keep going up. And like I said, rooting for two-way action, and these are teams that you would expect to get that.
Yeah, you won't have to worry moving forward about the Bucks taking 98% of the money against the Pistons. No. There were I'm sure, some very, very ugly spreads for the house in that series. But we have a pair of potential elimination games tonight, with the Clippers facing the Warriors and the Jazz facing the Rockets. Let's talk about them individually. Clippers, Warriors, what are you dealing? What kind of action are you seeing for Game 5 in Golden State tonight?
little worried about this one being a runaway. Caesars, we've been